I once completely missed a meeting in Sweden because I misunderstood two very simple Swedish words. And that's the thing about moving to another country. Sometimes it's the tiny everyday things that get you, because nobody thinks they need explaining. And strangely enough, quite a few of mine involve numbers. Oh no, don't worry, not accounting numbers. I've had enough of those after more than 20 years in finance. I'm talking about Swedish numbers, starting with Halv. This was when I was learning Swedish at SFI. One day after class, my teacher asked me to come back the next morning for a little meeting. The school wanted to talk to a few students about how we were finding the course, what was helping, what we wanted more help with, that kind of thing. So before I left, she said, "Kom klockan 9:30 imorgon." Okay, 9:30. My brain went 10:30. Didn't even question it. So the next morning, 9:30 came, and I wasn't there. And around 5 to 10 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was my teacher. She actually sounded a bit worried because it wasn't like me to be late. And I'm thinking, late? Then it clicked. 9:30 means 9:30. You're halfway towards 10, not half past 10. And actually, it wasn't just English confusing me. In Chinese, we'd also think of 9:30 as 9.5, not half 10. So my brain had absolutely no chance. I felt terrible, but I can tell you, I've never forgotten 9:30 since. Sometimes that's how you really learn a language, the hard way. And 9:30 wasn't the only Swedish number that took my brain a while to adjust to. Then there were week numbers. Now, week numbers weren't completely new to me by the time I started working in Sweden, because I'd already come across them at SFI and in everyday life. But at work, that's when I realized just how much Sweden loves them. I was working as a financial controller for a manufacturing company, and part of my job involved following companies' investments in machinery and equipment. So I'd regularly have conversations like, the equipment should arrive in week 29, then installation will probably be week 30 or 31. Or after the summer holidays, my manager might say, let's aim to have this finished by week 44. And I'd sit there thinking, when on earth is week 29? When on earth is week 44? Of course, I wouldn't say that. I'd quietly open my calendar. Ah, that week. Even now, week numbers don't come naturally to me. Week 1, absolutely. Week 52, pretty confident. Everything in between, I've got a rough idea. After all these years, I can normally work out which month we're talking about, which I consider progress. And I later learned this isn't actually some strange Swedish invention. It's an international week numbering standard used in several European countries. Sweden just seems to have really embraced it. And once you live here for a while, you start to understand why week numbers are quite useful. Because Swedes really like to plan. At work, I kind of get it. I've had meeting invitations months in advance. Sometimes I look at them and think, really? Already? But okay, you make sure everyone's available. You give people a deadline. Things don't drag on forever. Fair enough. What took me much longer to get used to was doing the same thing in private life. Someone might ask me in February, do you have any plans for the last weekend in May? Or even worse, are you free on the Saturday in week 22? And I'm thinking, first of all, what date is week 22? And secondly, it's February. How would I know what I'm doing on a Saturday in May? I've always been much more of a let's play it by ear. Unless it's a holiday or something important, I don't normally plan every weekend months ahead. But over the years, I think I've started to understand it a bit more. It's not necessarily about planning every single minute of your life. It can also be about respecting other people's time. People have work, children, activities, holidays, their own plans. So instead of assuming they'll be available, you ask early. Do I do this myself now? Not really, but at least it doesn't surprise me anymore. Well, as long as you tell me the date, not just the week number. And then there was this one place where I really didn't expect Swedish numbers to cause me problems. Excel. I'd already worked in accounting for years. So numbers and Excel? I thought I was safe. No. Because in Sweden, you use a comma for decimals. So 10.5, instead of 10.5, you see 10.5. Easy enough once you know it. Except I kept forgetting. even after I knew it. I'd use a dot when Excel was expecting a comma, or I'd be working with data that wasn't formatted the way I thought it was, and suddenly a formula wouldn't work, or a total just didn't look right. And if it's a small spreadsheet, fine. But when you're working with thousands and thousands of rows of data, good luck finding that one tiny problem. I remember looking at the numbers sometimes and thinking, something's not right. I couldn't always tell you immediately what was wrong, but after years of accounting, you develop this feeling when numbers just don't make sense. So I'd start digging, and eventually, there it was, the decimal separator, again. Honestly, I'm quite glad I had that accounting instinct. Otherwise, I probably would have spent much longer staring at Excel, wondering what on earth I'd done. Such a tiny thing, but when you actually work with numbers every day, not tiny at all. And not everything that confused me was about numbers. Some things just didn't make sense to me culturally. Like Tvättstuga, the shared laundry room. The first time I heard about this, I found it really strange because one of my impressions of Swedes was that people really value privacy, personal space, boundaries. So I couldn't quite make sense of this. You value personal space, but everyone in the building shares washing machines? In my head, I was imagining the laundry rooms I'd known from university and shared houses in England. People coming and going, waiting for machines. Someone else is washing sitting there when you need the machine. Maybe somebody takes yours out. And I thought, how do Swedes tolerate this? But I never actually lived in a flat in Sweden, so I didn't really know how it worked. Then my mum had a small flat for a couple of years. And I finally saw a Swedish Tvättstuga properly. And I thought, oh, of course there is a system. You book time slots, usually for a few hours. And during that time, the laundry room is basically yours. In my mom's building, nobody else could even get in during her booked slot. Only her key worked. And suddenly it made complete sense. It's a shared resource, but the system gives everybody their own space. Very Swedish, actually. And then I remember something. Years earlier, my Swedish boyfriend, now my partner, came to visit me in London. He thought it was strange because I had my washing machine in the kitchen and no dishwasher. So maybe we're even. I think that's one of the funny things about living in another country. It's often not the big cultural differences that catch you out. It's things like a meeting time, a week number, a comma in Excel, or apparently where you're supposed to wash your clothes. And nobody thinks to explain these things because to them, there's nothing to explain. It's just normal. Until someone from somewhere else comes along and says, wait, you do what? So now I love to hear yours. What is the one small thing about Sweden that nobody explained to you? Or if you're Swedish, was there anything you only realized was Swedish when someone from another country pointed out? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.